The first slide here is about your problem. So let this blue dot be the size of your problem. Just imagine that this blue dot is the size of your problem. So it's not very big. It's just a little dot at this point in time. So if this dot is the size of your problem, then it's manageable. But here's the thing, as you get too close to your problem, it becomes more difficult, right? It becomes more of a situation like this, where I have a problem and I need a solution. And if a problem becomes so big that you need a solution, then you're in a situation where you're up against the wall. And I'll give you a perfect example. I know somebody who had the revenue agency after them, or the revenue services after them, and they actually just took the money that they thought they were owed right out of their bank account, right out of their business account, and then locked them out. So can you imagine, you're running a business, multi-million-dollar business, you go in one day, next thing you know, money's been drawn out and your account's locked. What happens with checks outstanding and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's a problem needing a solution. It's immediate, right? Even another client of mine in California, same thing, owed a lot of money, miscalculation on the accountant's part, right? And so, these are the kinds of situations that you need a solution. And trust me, when you need a solution, you're anxious, you're frustrated, you're in a position where you can't be very rational, and so it's not a good state of mind. And here's the thing, I want to know why. Why is it such a problem? If you're too close to the problem, which is in the inner circle here. The outer circle is the outside of the circle is where the problem is not so big. It's manageable. You can look in and ask questions, right? So you want to know why being too close to the problem is an issue, because here's what's happening. We tend to do this. We tend to ignore. We tend to deny things. So we're denying, we're blaming. We end up blaming other people and looking for outside ways to take the heat off ourselves. We start complaining, and we start rationalizing, and there's a lot of inner resistance going on, and we hide. We start hiding, we start ignoring, blaming, rationalizing, denying, resisting, complaining. And this is what happens. And once we start doing all of this stuff, or some of this stuff, this is what it ends up being. It ends up being something I call a victim loop. We end up becoming a victim. We become a victim to the circumstance that's going on in our lives. So we're next to the problem, we need a solution, and we want to get out of this circle as fast as possible. So we become a victim as soon as we start to do these other things: blaming, complaining, denying, resisting, ignoring, hiding. And it becomes a real circumstance, because we are then perpetuating, we're becoming co-creators of our problem, because we're not facing it, we're not dealing with it. So this is all going on in our minds, right? I mean, we could be blaming in our mind, we're rationalizing quietly in our mind, silently, right? We're denying things silently in our mind, maybe verbally, and we're certainly resisting. There's an inner resistance, a blockage. We're ignoring things and not taking the right actions. So we're becoming a victim. And so in order to get out of this situation, or actually before I talk about that, I'd like to talk about, what if this situation grows? So what if this problem grows? So it's gone from being somewhat manageable, and then it becomes bigger and bigger. Then what happens? Then it becomes like a pressure cooker. At that point, we become so ingrained with what's going on, and it becomes so heated that we don't know how to get out, or we're trying to get out. We're trying every which way. And, it's like, having your house foreclosed, and that's happened in the past, let's say 10 years, where there was a lot of financial issues in North America, house foreclosures, and, a lot of upset. It's a pressure cooker. And, in this situation, we're the victim, and we are a victim. We're not the victim, sorry. We become a victim to our own problem. And so here's the way out. What if we start asking questions and seeking an answer? I mean, here's the thing: when you're on the outside of this circle, right, when you're on the outer edges looking in, we can ask questions and seek an answer. So let's say, for example, with respect to the revenue agency or the revenue services demanding money. and locking out your business account and just taking money. There was probably some what I call amber alerts. There were some signs in in the months beforehand. Maybe it could be 3, 4, 5, 6 months, 12 months, as sort of an indicator as to what's coming. These are the amber alerts that we don't recognize. It could be intuitive. It could be something internally. It could be from what's going on in your environment, what you're seeing. It could be a letter that you received from the government saying, we have some questions, or we might be calling on you, or this is a problem, or they send you, and you ignore it. Well, at that point, when you ignored that, you were saying no to asking questions and seeking an answer. You're just putting it off, and that's where the issue gets really big. We're no longer able to look from the outside in, and we are getting sucked into this vacuum, this problem, and that's where we lose control. But if we are able to stop and ask questions and seek an answer, even if you're in a problem, maybe you have a problem right now, and if you have a problem, my strongest suggestion is to ask yourself some questions, right? Ask yourself some questions, because that's the only way to get out. And you have to, first of all, you have to take 100% responsibility for your life. You definitely have to take responsibility for your life, because you can't succeed at anything unless you do that. Because basically, whatever's happening in your life has either been based on your actions or inaction. You've either taken no action or you're allowing things. You've allowed somebody or something to happen in your life. So you have to take 100% responsibility, and you cannot blame. I mean, here's the thing: if we've ever blamed anyone or any circumstance in our life, if we've ever complained about anything, then we have to give that up. We have to give up blaming, complaining, fault finding, making excuses, because in life there's either reasons and excuses or results, one or the other. You cannot have both in life, right? You have to take full responsibility, because either your actions have led to the outcomes that you're getting, or your inaction. You've either allowed something, and so here's the thing: if you can take total responsibility for your life, and that means all of your results, both your successes and your failures, this is a prerequisite for creating a full and happy life. And it's only by acknowledging that you have created everything up until now in your life, and then you can take charge of creating the future you want. That's the thing. If you've been on some of my recent trainings, I talk about your thoughts being deposited. They're being deposited as down payments towards an outcome. And you need to work on that. The subconscious mind is always listening. It's always eavesdropping. And it's always producing the results based on your dominant thoughts. What you're thinking about most of the time, where you're focusing your attention, that's what's happening. Your mind is a supercomputer. It's there to support you, keep you alive. It keeps your heart beating, your blood flowing. It keeps all that stuff going. So the only thing you need to do is use the right thoughts, put the right thoughts out, and move towards what you want with your thoughts, with your actions, with your emotions, with your intentions. And here's the thing: if something doesn't turn out as planned, then you can ask yourself, how did I create that? What was I thinking? What did I think in advance? What were my beliefs? What did I say or not say? What did I do or not do to create the results? How did I get, the other person to act this way? And what do I need to do differently next time to get the results I want? Ask questions. See, that's what the whole point here is: asking questions and seeking an answer versus having a problem and needing a solution. Two really different perspectives, Because when you ask, you're in a state of mind where you're open to receiving. But when you're in a problem, needing a solution, you're just looking for any outlet, any way out. So just know this: everything you think, say, and do needs to become intentional and aligned with your purpose, your values, and your goals. You have control over only 3 things in your life. Number 1 is your thoughts, the thoughts you think, the images you visualize, and the actions you take, the behavior, right? Thoughts, feelings, and actions, right? And how you use these 3 things determines everything you experience. And just remember, if you know what Einstein said, he said, imagination is everything. And imagination is just an image in your mind. It's just something you're creating there, but it's an intention. It does move you in a certain direction. And if you don't like what you're producing or experiencing, you have to change your responses. You have to change your negative thoughts to positive ones. Change what you're daydreaming about. Change your habits. Change what you read. Change your friends. Change your colleagues. Change the people you hang around with. Change how you talk to yourself and others. That's a really important one. Change how you talk to yourself, because we do talk to ourselves, and quite often we talk to ourselves in a negative way. And think about blaming. We talked about blaming earlier, and we often blame. And we don't want to take responsibility for our problems, then we blame. And blame is a waste of time. No matter how much fault you find in another person, and regardless of how much you blame him or her, it will not change you. No matter how much fault finding you find in somebody else, it's not going to change you. And that's what you need to work on. It is you, because nothing else matters unless you get yourself mentally aligned with what you want. And think about this. People only complain about things that they can do something about. We don't complain about the things we have no power over. Have you ever heard somebody complain about gravity? That's something we don't have power over. Not at all. Have you ever seen, an elderly person, with their walker going slowly down the street, cursing and swearing at gravity? No, because gravity is not within our control. And why not? Right? I mean, because we accept it. We accept it as being normal and out of our control. Everything else, when we complain, we think that there's something better. And by that sheer fact, we think that we have control. We can do something else, right? So learn to just, a note here, if you want to take a really positive note, is learn to replace complaining with making requests, asking questions, making requests, taking action that will achieve your desired outcomes. This is what successful people do. That is what works. If you find yourself in a situation you don't like, either you work to make it better, or you leave, or you change something, right? You don't stay with it. Staying with it that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and not getting any different results. So, all right, so back to this presentation I'm talking about here. So asking questions and seeking an answer, right? So when we ask questions and seek an answer, guess what? Then we begin to do this. We begin to recognize, maybe some solutions, some ways out. We start getting intuitive nudges. People start showing up in our lives, and it starts, revealing itself. We take responsibility as a part of asking questions, right? We're now taking a different mindset, which is we're saying, okay, I'm going to do something about this. I'm not going to sit back and say I'm a victim. I'm going to get up and do something. We also forgive, because in terms of blaming and complaining, we're basically saying that somebody else is responsible for our outcomes. And we know that's not true now, based on what we've been talking about here today. So we do forgiving. We do some forgiving. We let go, release, let go of old ways. And then we also do some self-reflection. When we self-reflect, then we can realize what we're giving our attention to, and maybe how we're blaming, complaining, and maybe the inner resistance, maybe the words and the thoughts that are coming up. It could be something as simple as, let's say in your business, you make videos. You might do Facebook Live videos, or maybe you make some training videos or something, and maybe you catch yourself saying, oh, but I don't know how to do it, or I got to memorize the script, and I don't know, and we, the self-reflection will reveal the thoughts that we're having. And then if we start asking questions of how can it happen? How can I get this video done easily and effortlessly? How can I get some help on this? Then the way will show itself. So we have more as we do self-reflection, we have more self-awareness, and then we can catch ourselves when we're ignoring, hiding, blaming, rationalizing, resisting, and denying. And then we learn. This is the thing that moves us out. We end up learning, and here's the unique thing about learning. If you haven't thought about it from this perspective before, when we learn, we get to look back. And by looking back, we see an old version of ourselves, a previous version of ourselves. And that is very important. And I'll tell you why. Because when we look back and we see where we were and where we are now, we become grateful and we're in a state of appreciation. And if there's something I can really share that's really powerful, that's been powerful in my life, is see yourself being in a state of appreciation. See yourself being in a constant state of appreciation. Stand where you are and look back and think about, where you've come from, or maybe look back from a future version of yourself. Look back to your current situation right now, and look back at it and think to yourself, okay, if I'm over here now, what does that look like and feel like? And start putting yourself into a state of appreciation and gratitude. I think that's the importance. That's the contrast, right? That's the contrast between what you didn't want, what you didn't like, and what you do like. And the uniqueness about this is when you start doing this more often, you'll get a little bit control over this contrast, a little bit of leverage. So when something doesn't happen, or when something doesn't happen for you, or something doesn't work out, or when you have a problem, or when a situation arises, you don't go into reaction mode and get frustrated and deny, blame, and complain. You don't do all those things. Instead, you get control over it. You say, okay, wait a second, stand back. You become observant, objective, and then you can look at the situation broader. You broaden your perspective, and then you can look at it and say, all right, I've been in this situation before, or what's going on? You start asking questions. What's going on here? Something is out of place here. And then you can move into the solution much easier. Because when you don't do what we typically talked about here, which is ignore, hide, blame, rationalize, resist, deny, complain, we don't do that, then we don't stay next to the problem. We move out, away from it. Make sense? So that's the uniqueness of having a little bit control over your contrast. And then we take action, of course. We're taking action, right? We learned, we have self-awareness, self-reflection, we forgive, we forget, we take responsibility, recognize, and we take action. And then our action is going to produce a reaction. Every action has a reaction. So that will produce a reaction. If we like the reaction, then we know we've done something good, something right, something that aligns with us. We're now mentally aligning ourselves. So if you haven't heard me say that before about being mentally aligned, that's when our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our images, our visions are aligned with what we want, and then we're tuned into it. I mean, if you think about something being at a frequency, the thing you want is at a frequency. Let's say if it's a physical thing, like a car or a house or something, well, those things are at a certain frequency. And the only way you can attract them is if your mind is at the same frequency, that you believe that you can have that thing, that it's yours, you deserve it, you're worthy of it. Then you're aligned. All right, so again, inside the circle, that's the victim, being a victim in the victim loop. On the outside of the circle, recognizing, taking responsibility, forgiving, self-reflection, self-awareness, learning and taking action, that is being in an accountability loop. And when you're in the accountability loop, guess what? You're taking responsibility and you're finding the way out. I don't know if you're a Napoleon Hill fan, but if you are, and I forget which one of his books, I've studied a few of them. And when I say study, I've read them like 30 to 60 times. So I think it was in Think and Grow Rich. So Napoleon Hill's work, he talked about where he had a problem and he just kept walking around the schoolyard and he kept saying to himself, there's a way out and I'm going to find it. There's a way out and I'm going to find it. There's a way out and I'm going to find it. He said he might have said that thousands of times, but he just kept repeating it until he found the way out. Why? Because when you ask your subconscious mind for the answer, or if you have a faith, you believe in a higher power, source, or God, a God of some kind, then you ask those questions and seek an answer, and you can be open to it. Then you're open, right? You're allowing. You'll open and be allowing the solutions to come to you. So here's what happens when we move into accountability. We have more control, we're more calm, we're more confident, more aware. We can observe, we can stand back. When you can observe, that is really the key. When you can get objective perspective and observe, that is so, so, so important. Like, take any situation. I had a stone chip on my glass recently on the windshield of my car, and it's a big one. It actually can't be repaired. It has to be replaced, the whole glass. But anyway, it hit, and this is actually the second time in my life. And both times I just looked at it and I said, what is that about? And I just, I didn't get upset or anything like that, because, I could easily think about the cost, the time, and everything. I just said, what is that about? How did I attract that? And then I thought about the thoughts I had and things I did just prior to that, and I realized what had caused it, how I had caused it, how I allowed it into my life. So yeah, when you can be objective and observe, really important. Those are really positive traits. If you can master that or just work on that, that's amazing. And then you can plan, right? You can plan. I mean, if you have a goal or an objective you want to achieve, you can set out to hit that and come up with a plan. There might be 5 major steps to get to your outcome. I do this all the time. I'll just explain it quickly how I do it, but I just take Post-it notes. I write out the end results, and the end result usually isn't just something tangible like I'm going to make $1 million, let's say, or something like that. It's more along the lines of I'm living my dream lifestyle. I get to do what I want when I want, or I have more free time and more free will than ever. That might be the result of having $1 million is that, yeah, I have more flexibility, more time. And in reality, I have a money problem, because if I have $1 million, then I don't want to be just sitting on it. I have to invest it. So I want to invest it. So, and again, just coming back to the model. So think with the end in mind. So you create an image of what's the end result is, and you write that down on a Post-it note. And whatever that is, I mean, that could be jumping up and down. That could be dancing in the rain. It could be, walking on the beach. It could be, celebrating with family or friends, whatever it is. But that's the end result. And then you create a Post-it note where you are right now. So on that Post-it note is just, your current circumstances, just saying, maybe it's writing a book. So, or an ebook or something like that. You just writing an ebook, and then in between there could be, just say maybe 5 steps. There might be like 5 major steps in between, and you just write down what you think those key steps are, the big steps. Let's say if it's writing a book, I was just learning from Brendon Burchard, who you might know. He's big in the coaching, speaking, and teaching business, and I've studied him and attended his courses, a couple of them actually, Experts Academy and High Performance Academy. Great teacher and mentor. So, Brendon Burchard, he talked about, if you're going to write a book, and he said the 5 key things that he learned about writing a book weren't the common things that you would think about. One was just getting it written, just writing it, right? Don't mess around, right? Just get the book ready. Start getting that stuff out of your head. Number 2 was partner up with some people who have a list. Get to know people who have a list that you can tap into, and that they can promote you, right? Maybe with thousands of people, right? That's maybe not easily done, but you can start making some partnerships, and you never know how that's going to all come about. But that's a critical factor in getting a book written. Obviously, is to get it out there, right? Number 3 was about having a vision for it. What is your goal? What is your objective? Do you want to be a New York Times bestseller or something like that? You have to create a vision for that, and that will attract the possibilities and the ways of getting that done to you. So that's a critical factor. Number 4 was about creating a blog or a Facebook page, someplace where you can communicate and you can engage with people and start giving them tools and resources and bits of information that are from your book, or maybe that will lead to your book, right? So you start giving them those bits of information. You start building a community. Another mentor of mine called Michael Hyatt, he does this very well. He did it extremely well. He has hundreds of thousands of people on his blog, and it's all because he took this information he had and started sharing his best bits of information, and it's just phenomenal. So when you start building a community like that, then that can help you accomplish getting your book out very, very easily, right? And another thing another thing Brendan mentioned is, just about publishing it. Whether you're self-publishing or whether you go with an agent or not, it's up to you. You make that choice. But those could be the 5 steps that you say, okay, those are the 5 key steps to writing a book. But you just put those down, put them up on your whiteboard or someplace, and get to work on one of them. Pick one that you can do, or that maybe it's you make some contacts with people that might share your book, and start developing a relationship with them. That might be the first step, or just writing your book. And if you are going to follow what I'm saying here, what you're going to want to do is, whatever these 5 steps are, you need to put them on your calendar. If they're not on your calendar, they're not happening. They have to be on your calendar. And you have to block off times for each of these things to get them done. So I know I'm digressing a little bit here, but I did want to share with you at least an example to say, where you're taking action and how you can take action with respect to charting a roadmap, right, to get to the result you want. Without a roadmap, guess what? You've got where you're starting right now, and you've got your end result, which maybe it's producing a book and making millions. So what's in between? That becomes scary, uncertain, unknown, and oftentimes we don't even start because we're so hung up with that. All right, so I'm going to keep going here. And by the way, if you're typing any questions in the chat, I'll get to them in a moment. Unfortunately, the way I'm sharing my screen right now, I'm not able to see any questions coming up, but I will in a moment, because I'll be able to switch my screen. So here's the thing. Coming back to this idea, when this dot, or when this problem, is minimized because we're starting to ask questions and we start seeking the way out, right? Then it becomes more manageable and within our control, right? And here's the thing. Simple isn't necessarily easy. It sounds simple what I'm talking about here. Though this principle is simple, it's not necessarily easy to implement. It requires concentrated awareness, dedicated discipline, and a willingness to experiment and take risks. You have to be willing to pay attention to what you're doing and to the results you're producing. You have to ask yourself, your family, your friends, your colleagues, your managers, your teachers, your coaches, and your clients for feedback. You have to ask people that you respect, of course, right? You ask them these questions. Is what I'm doing working? Could I be doing it better? Is there something more I should be doing that I'm not doing? Is there something I'm doing that I should stop doing? How do you see me limiting myself, right? Ask those questions to those people. And then internally, you can ask yourself these questions. How am I creating or allowing this to happen? How am I allowing these things to happen in my life, or how am I creating them? And what am I doing that's working that I need to be doing more of? And should I do more practicing, meditating, delegating, trusting, listening, asking questions? My highest recommendation is delegate. And I know a lot of people have issues with delegating, especially if they're not generating the kind of income that they think they should have to hire people. But there's always trading and bartering. You can always find somebody who's willing to do a trade with you. And I've found these people throughout the years, and it's quite easy. In fact, it's effortless. I don't even try. Whenever I need something, I end up meeting somebody. It's just opportune. I was in Dallas last month, and I was in line for lunch, and I ended up talking with a gentleman, and he was teaching something that had to do with relationships and parenting and those types of topics. And we started talking, and it was bang on. These are the kinds of things that I could use some support on, and we're going to end up working together. And that's how things happen. So you probably heard it before. When you're ready, the teacher appears. And oftentimes when the teacher appears, a resistance comes up, because then we're going into uncharted territory. We start feeling like we don't know whether that's the right person, or whether it's a good investment, or whether you're going to get the outcomes that you want. And you have to trust. You have to trust that you're being guided by life and by a higher power, and that you're always taken care of. If you can do that, then you can move through these circumstances. And then guess what? This dot can become nothing. It can become diminished down to nothing. And your problems can be like this more and more and more. You can treat them like the size of a dot, keep them the size of a dot, ask questions, and move through problems much easier. And just remember, the whole focus here is about your subconscious mind being really powerful, like a supercomputer, and it's there to support you. And the inner work matters. I know I'm talking about asking questions outwardly as well, but the inner questions really do matter. I highly recommend on a daily basis asking yourself some questions. You might just, if you love journaling, like I do, I journal all the time, maybe in the evening, you just write down some how-to questions in your journal. How to go to the next step. Let's say if we're talking about writing a book. How can I get my book done so it's ready in February? Or how can I find the best agent? Or how can I get my book published for the least amount of money with the most impact? You just start asking questions, and you'll see that it'll start to turn around. It'll start to change. These questions really do matter, right? And then you're no longer blaming, right? You're no longer making excuses. And here's the thing. I mean, in life we have a combination of things. We have events. We have results, responses and outcomes, right? So the event plus our response equals some sort of outcome, right? So if we start blaming an event for our lack of results, which is our outcome, then we need to make some changes here, right? We need to have a different response. So we have total control over what's going on. We just have to exert that. You can just change the response to the event and then get a different outcome. And again, sounds simple, but it does take dedicated discipline, willingness to experiment, take risks. You have to work at it, and I'm a big fan of that, and I do work at things, and I think that the consistency factor matters so much. Being consistent is something that I don't think we've been taught to be consistent about things, other than in school we've been taught to consistently show up to school and consistently do your homework, and I don't know what else, but consistency in business and in life matters because it's your pattern. You can look back and you can say, I consistently blogged every week, and here's my outcome. If you're a fan of Jeff Walker's, who's the product launch formula creator, excuse me, he's been blogging for the past 5 years. One vlog, he does a video every week. One video and a blog post every week without failure. Every week. Doesn't matter if he's going through the Grand Canyon for I don't know what it was, 3 or 4, 5, 6 weeks or something like that. He did the videos in advance and had them ready or whatever. But that's a commitment, and it's consistent. So whatever you do consistently is going to result in an outcome. And if you can consistently ask yourself questions and seek a way out and get more control over your problems and look inside instead, be on the edge of your problem. When you're on the edge of your problem, you have more control, you can exert it. And especially pay attention to the amber alerts. Amber alerts are information you're receiving from your environment, from the people around you. And those amber alerts are indicators that something is not right, something's misaligned, and your mental alignment is not there. So that's a clear indicator that you need to get aligned and do some work, do some thinking, do some writing. And I really do believe that writing is can be your saving grace, because when you write, you get things out of your head. You might have heard me say this before, but your thoughts become entangled as they pass through your lips and over pencil tips. So if you get your thoughts out of your head, speak them or write them. Writing is even better, because then you get in a tangible form, and then you can take that thing you wrote and do some work on it. And then once you do some work on it, you can start seeing some results, and then you get leverage, right? You start getting some leverage because you learn how to move through your problems and situations and succeed. And again, create a roadmap to what you want. Think with the end in mind and create a roadmap, just 5 steps to get from where you are now to where you want to go. Put them up on your board. I have a board right in front of me here right now, and I have projects on there that I've had since January, and actually a number of them are right off the board now because I've finished them, and some of them I didn't even notice what I had been doing but I actually accomplished the majority of the steps in the project without having been aware of it. And just through conversations or interactions or something, and I didn't really think about it, mentally concentrate on it and think, okay, I'm gonna ask for something, or I'm gonna find this person or find a solution. I just had a conversation, open conversation with somebody, and then that led to one thing led to another, and then next thing you know, I'm taking that post-it off the board because it's done. That's how the power of setting your intentions and setting those goals. It's like a vision board. It's just it's amazing how that can happen when you get that thought out of your head, the steps out of your head, and put them down. All right. So again, this presentation was all about ways to move through problems, not getting caught up in them, and asking questions and using the power of your subconscious mind to get through them. So I hope that you really enjoyed this presentation, and I do look forward to seeing you on future trainings.